My dear ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to talk about how to prevent violence against women. 1 in 3 women worldwide experience physical or sexual violence, mostly by an intimate partner. Violence against women and girls is a human right violation, and the immediate and long term physical, sexual, and mental consequences for women and girls can be devastating. It may lead to even death. Violence negatively affects women's general well being and prevents women from fully participating in the society. It impacts their families, their communities, and the country at large. It has tremendous costs, from greater strains on healthcare to legal expenses and losses in productivity. At least 155 countries have passed laws on domestic violence, and 140 have legislation on sexual harassment in the workplace. But challenges remain in enforcing these laws, limiting women and girls' access to safety and justice. Not enough is done to prevent violence, and when it does occur, it often goes unpunished. So, let us go in detail about how to prevent violence. Violence against women and girls remains the most pervasive human rights violation in the world. It affects more than 1 in 3 women, and that is a figure that has remained largely unchanged over the last decade. The global emergencies, crises, and conflicts have further intensified violence against women and girls and aggravated the drivers and risk factors. The climate change is aggravating all types of gender based violence against women and girls, an already visible pattern that will undoubtedly grow more extreme as the crisis worsens. Rapidly expanding digitalization is increasing online violence against women and girls, compounding existing forms of violence and leading to the emergence of new ones. At the same time, there has been a rise in anti-rights movements and anti-feminist groups, driving an expansion of regressive laws and policies, a backlash against women's rights organization, and a spike in attacks against women, human rights defenders, and activists. In this context, violence against women might seem unimaginable, but it isn't. Large scale reductions in violence against women can be achieved. It can be achieved through feminist activism and advocacy coupled with coordinated action across justice, health, financial, and other sectors. The recent evidence suggests that strong and autonomous feminist movements are the most critical factor in driving change. Ending violence against women is everyone's business. Now, I'm going to tell about 10 ways you can act now to end violence against women and girls. The violence against women and girls remains the most pervasive human rights violation in the world, as we have discussed earlier. It is affecting 1 in 3 women. So, first one is speak up, speak out. Violence against women is pervasive, but It's not inevitable. Unless we stay silent. So, what do we have to do? In the face of rising anti feminist movements, it's more crucial than ever that we speak out and speak in. Taboos around gender based violence provide perpetrators with impunity and prevent women and girls from getting the help they need. Less than 40% of women who experience violence seek help of any sort. Let survivors and activists know you stand with them. Amplify their voices and stories. Create spaces for dialogue both in person and online. Number two, know the issue and signs. Violence against women takes many forms. It can be physical, sexual, or emotional. It can be public or private, online or offline, perpetrated by a stranger or an intimate partner. Regardless of how, where, or why it happens, it has serious short and long term consequences for women and girls and serves to prevent their full and equal participation in the society. If you think someone in your life might be suffering from abuse, there are common signs you can look for. Number three, call out sexual harassment. For many women, sexual harassment is a daily experience. Whether it is online, on the street, or in the workplace, brushing off inappropriate behavior serves to further normalize it. Common forms of harassment like online bullying, catcalling, sexual comments, and sexual jokes serves to make women and girls feel unwelcome and unsafe in public spaces. They contribute to a culture of impurity in which women can be harmed without consequences. Create a safer environment for everyone online and offline by challenging your peers to reflect on their own behavior and speaking up when someone crosses the line, or by enlisting the help of others if you don't feel safe. Number four, challenge beliefs on masculinity. Toxic masculinity drives violence against women. Evidence show that women in relationships with men whose beliefs and behaviors reinforce male dominance and gender inequality are more likely to experience intimate partner violence. Traditional concepts of masculinity tend to emphasize traits like aggression, strength, and control, while disparaging sensitivity, empathy, vulnerability, and other traits traditionally associated with femininity. When we fail to challenge these beliefs, everyone loses. Reflect on your own ideas about masculinity and femininity and think critically about depictions of gender in media and culture. Support the men and boys in your life to embrace caretaking, emotional expression, and other traditionally non masculine traits. Number five, fund women's organizations. Investing in women's movements matters. Evidence shows that a strong and autonomous feminist movement is the most crucial factor in driving policy change on gender based violence. But women's rights on gender based violence, or the women's rights organizations, key drivers of feminist mobilization, are increasingly being defunded, sidelined, and silenced in decision making spaces. Increasing long term funding to women's rights organizations is the key to finding effective solutions to prevent and respond to violence against women. Donate to local organizations that empower women. Support survivors and promote actions and policies designed to reduce and prevent violence. Number 6, call for better responses and services. Services for women and girls experiencing violence can be the difference between life and death. This means that shelters, hotlines, counseling, and all support for survivors of gender based violence need to be available for those in need, even during crises and emergencies. Get more involved by volunteering at a local women's shelter, donating clothes or supplies, or training to become a crisis counselor. Number 7, demand more data. To effectively combat gender based violence, we need to understand the issue. Relevant data collection is the key to implementing successful prevention measures and providing survivors with the right support. And the collection of sex, disaggregated, and other crucial gathered gender data remains a low priority for governments. As gender-based violence has spiked due to COVID-19, climate change, and other crises, the gaps in gender-sensitive data collection have become more glaring than ever. Number 8, push for stronger laws. We are still 21 years away from comprehensive laws banning violence against women to be in peace globally. The world needs stronger protection mechanisms to prevent and eliminate violence, harassment threats, intimidation, and discrimination against women, human rights defenders, and women's rights advocates and activists. Number 9, support women's leadership. During COVID-19, women were vastly underrepresented on recovery task forces, a disparity reflected in the insufficiency of government responses to gender-specific issues like heightened domestic violence. The same is true for climatic action, peace building, and a whole host of other issues. When women aren't at the table, their voices aren't being heard. That makes it all too easy for decision-making bodies to overlook crucial gaps in policies and finance. Women's representation in decision-making spaces helps to ensure that the needs of women and girls are front and center in crisis responses, humanitarian and peace agreements, and policies of all kinds. At the same time, women leaders face heightened risk of violence across 9 regions. 82% of women parliamentarians reported experiencing some form of psychological violence during their terms. Call for women's increased representation in leadership and for heightened protections for women in positions of power. Support women political candidates and women led organizations and companies. Or take matters into your own hands. Become the women leader and you want to see in the world. Number 10, build solidarity with other movements. We are stronger than we work together. When we work together, we are stronger. Violence against women and girls is inherently connected to other forms of harm and injustice, inducing racism, homophobia, xenophobia, ableism, poverty, and climate change. Strengthen the fight against gender based violence by getting involved in other social and political movements and getting activists from those movements involved in yours. Together, we can resist the rollback on women's rights, amplify the demands of feminist movements across the world, and push forward to end violence against women and girls once and for all. Thank you so much, my dear ladies and gentlemen, for listening to this talk of mine to end violence against women. Stay blessed.